Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be taking a focus on the Moonman M800. I've got to be honest, these were one of the first Chinese pens that I got and I love them. I've got the purple one here. I've got all the other colours as well. That's how much I like them. So join me now down on the mat. Let's take a look at these pens. We'll do a writing sample. Then I'll give you my thoughts on them. Welcome down to the mat. So we're going to start off with this one. This is the purple version of the M800. I thought we'll start off with one. We'll do a body walkthrough. Then I'll fetch in the other colours so you can have a quick look at those. So I'll say this is the purple version. So parts of this, as we spin it around, you can see here on the cap, we've got this nice gorgeous pattern there, haven't we, with whites and blacks and greys and pale purples. If I spin it round, you can see a lot of the resin is transparent, so you can see through it. Here's a bit more of that pattern. I think the patterning looks really nice. Here down on the barrel we've got a whole load of it. Then we're back to the transparent part. Now, I understand why this is. It's the way to do with the moulding. But it's one of my, I'm not going to say disappointments, but I'd love to have seen this patterning all the way around. Or if they can't do that, I'd love somehow for the patterns to match up. So maybe there where I've uncapped that slightly, so we can see that it's all lining up now. But then we're not lining up here on the back. And as I say, I know it's down to the way it's manufactured, so I do understand that. It's just a little bit of a disappointment for me. Take a look around the body. So the top here, we've got a conical top with a pointer there at the end. We're coming down, and then we've got, I would say there's an ever so slight taper down to where we've got the ring for that clip. The clip, fairly springy. It's got that gold coloured material, and then we've got the wheel at the bottom. Remember that this is, I'm not going to say a clone or a copy, it's heavily inspired by the Leonardo Momento Zero, which has also got that wheel on there. The cap itself, it tapers out till we get to really where the bottom of that wheel is, and then it flattens off till we get down to here where we've got two bands in parallel. In between those bands you can see a little bit more of that resin. Then the cap tapers down and gives us a little tiny drop down to the actual body. The body, to my eye, is tapering down all the way. Now, I'm sometimes not certain about this because when we get down to about maybe 2/3 long, it may be the same width and then tapers. But I would say it's actually tapering all the way down. We've got another band, and then we've got here the end finial with that dome. It's nice, it's simple. If we take off the cap, we go half, one, about 1 1/4 turns to come off. We'll look at the nibs in a minute. Unscrew the body, cartridge converter. They come with the converters, so I think that's really one of the nice things. You don't have to buy anything extra. Got metal fittings, so not really something that you'll be able to eyedropper. The inside, not sure if you can see that, that's just the resin, so we've got resin on metal there. The section, I like the shape of the section. We'll look at the nibs a bit more closer in a second. It's very similar to what we see on that Momento Zero. So it tapers down, and then as we go to the bottom of the section, it's nice and flat. I find this is really comfy to use. It's sat in my hand quite nicely. My fingers just rest there. Really nice. It is, I've got to be honest, it is one of my favourite pens. I'm going to fetch in the other colours now, and then we'll take a look at the nibs. So I've got the green version, I've got the blue version, and I've also got the amber version. So all four of these pens, very similar. The only real difference is it's the nib. So let's get rid of this amber one. So the nibs that I've got on these. On the blue version, this comes with the Moonman nib. On the purple version, you can buy this with a Bock nib. So there we go. So these are the only two options you get with this pen. You either get Moonman or you get Bock, and they're both fine nibs. There's no other choice of nib available. But what there is this is a number 6 nib. Means you can swap it fairly easy. So on the green one, I've got on there a Goulet Yoho nib. This is a broad nib. Unfortunately, I haven't got any ink in this at the moment, so I can't show you this one writing. Oh, this is such a wet nib. It is such a joy to write with. Really is one of my favourite pens. And to be honest, all it was a case of unscrewing the nib unit, pulling the nib out, put the new one in, screw it back together, and there we are going. It took me all of about 2 minutes to swap that nib. Now let's do some size comparisons. So let me just swap over and I'll fetch in my 2 standard pens. So here it is with my 2 standard comparison pens. So we've got a Pilot Metropolitan and we've got a Lamy Safari. In terms of total length, ever so slightly longer than the 2 of those. Let me take the caps off. To my eye, these again, they're very similar in size. There's nothing really that much longer. Maybe the Metropolitan ever so slightly shorter. And I would actually say this M800 is in between the size of that Metro and the Lamy Safari. But when you're using it, it doesn't feel short at all. I find this really nice to use unposted. Talking about posting, let me post these pens. Posted, we see a big difference when it's against the Metropolitan, but again, with the Safari, very, very similar in size. To show you in my hand, this is in my hand posted, and as we saw earlier, this is unposted. Works quite nicely unposted. Just pop this back down. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to swap these 2 comparison pens, and I'm going to fetch in 2 that are in roughly the same price range. So the pens that I've now brought in, I've got a Pen BBS 487. That was 54 Australian dollars. I've also brought in a Narwhal Key West, and this one was 66 Australian dollars. All of these number 6 size nibs, so they're very much similar in terms of that. And if I wanted to, I could swap them around between them. Not going to do that though, but you've got the option, and that's one of the nice things. Certainly, to be honest, with a lot of fountain pens, I like to have the option to swap things around. The Key West, although I'm showing it posted, does not post very well at all. As you can see, it really just slightest tap and it falls off. Let me take the caps off and we'll look at these unposted. Unposted, again, we're talking very similar length. There's very little in it. Width-wise, very similar. So in terms of dimensions, I've got to be honest, to me, these look so similar. You know, yes, we've got different patterns, we've got different shapes, but size-wise, not a lot in it. Let me pop the caps back on. With the caps on, again, very similar in size, aren't they? Not a lot in it between all these 3 pens. Now, one of the things I'm going to show you with the M800, and this I get quite often, when I go to cap it, that time it went on, but quite often it doesn't seem to engage, so I'm spinning around like this, and I have to slightly readjust that so that it will happen. That occurs on all 4 of the pens. The threads, they're resin on resin, so there we go, we've got resin in there in the cap. But I say, it's just, you know, there it is, it's happening in real life. Then once I wiggle a little bit, it'll then go on. I'm going to swap this out, and I'm going to fetch in my rule of measurement. So here we have the rule of measuring. Let's just fetch the pen in. So the length of this pen is 14.2 centimetres when it's capped. Uncapped, that comes in at 12.7 centimetres. Posted, that's 16.6 centimetres. In terms of widths, at the widest part of the body, so down here, that comes in at 1.4 centimetres. The cap, 1.5 centimetres. And the section goes from 1 centimetre up to 1.2 centimetres. So nice widths as well there. Just going to now move this out of the way, and we'll fetch in the scales of weighing. So weights, for this one I'm going to use the amber version. There's no ink in that one. 23 grams. For the capillerne, 7 grams. And for the body, 16 grams. Not a heavy pen in any way, shape or form. But it's a resin pen, so you wouldn't really expect it to be overly heavy. Let me move this out of the way and we'll fetch in today's writing paper. So today's writing paper, this is by Ayush. It's 100 GSM paper. Really nice fountain pen friendly paper. It's lined, it's got a nice line on it, nice line width. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start directly below the previous pens. That was the Visconti Van Gogh. Just move this up so we've got it all in screen. Let's do some writing. So here we have a Moonman M800. This is the Bockfine nib. In terms of dollar price, we've got a price range here. We go from $52 and then the most expensive one I bought was $66. The $52 ones, they're the ones with the Moonman nibs. The $66 ones, they're the ones with the Bock nib. You pay more for that Bock nib. So again, something to be aware of. I will be honest, I do think it's worth it. I do find the writing experience with the Bock nib to be a little bit smoother, but even the Moonman nib, it's got a lovely tactileness to it. The ink is by Diamine. And it's violet. I think this is a nice ink. Goes well with this purple pen. Let's look at drying times. So immediate. 10 seconds. 30 seconds. Still some smudging, so we'll go for 1 minute. After a minute, that's nice and dry. I do find these pens to be slightly on the drier side than some of the other ones, but again, it's a fine nib, so it's not putting down the same width of line that I'd get with a lot of my other pens, because in those, they're mainly broad nibs. Let's write our sentence. I'm just going to move the mic. I quite enjoy the writing experience. You can hear the tactileness, you can hear that little bit of feedback coming off, and I can feel, I'm not going to say a drag on the page, but I can feel a little bit of the texture of the paper. Now this Ayush paper, this has got a slight texture to it, which adds to that with this pen. Very enjoyable though. Line variation, that's with no pressure. This is with pressure, so ever so slightly wider. I do find that the Bock nib doesn't feel as stiff as the Moonman nib. So that's again something which you need to bear in mind, and maybe that's where the extra $10 that I paid for it comes in, but it's still something to be aware of. Let's look at the flow. Seems to be going on and on and on, doesn't it? No issues with flow going across the page there. I have had some flow issues with the Moonman M800s, but I think that might have been my doing. I did have some shimmer ink in each of these at one time. So what I've been doing over the past couple of weeks, as these have been running out, I've been pulling out the nib, I've been pulling out the feed, and I've been giving it a good clean and putting it through my ultrasonic cleaner, just to try and hopefully get rid of any bits of that shimmer that might have been stuck in there. And certainly with this purple one, which was the first one I did that with, and the only one that I've re-inked since doing it, have had no flow issues since then. So that's why I think it might have been a problem of garage make rather than a problem with the pen itself. Just going to fetch in my Tomoe River paper. I'll show you a few examples of writing with this pen. So the first one This is with that green pen, and this is, as I said, with the Goulet Broad. And in there I had Pilot Iroshizuku Shinryoku. Wow, this is such a nice pen. It's so nice that we've got a nice wide line, not a lot of line variation. Flow keeps up. As you can see here where I've done my smudge, gloriously wet. This is that same M800, but with the Moonman fine nib that came in it. Let me just see if I can show you the difference there. Same ink, same pen body. The only difference is the nib. I do love the broad nib, but even this fine one isn't too bad. There we are, just one final look. Then let's go jump forward in time. I know you've seen some of my other scribbles. This is with the amber pen. So there we go. This is with that bottle nib. Again, no problems with there. Nice and wet ink. I say Tomoe River 52 GSM. Then the final one we'll look at. This is the purple one with this Diamine Violet. This is the one we've just done our writing with. One of the things I do notice, hopefully we can get this on camera, my smudges. So this is an immediate smudge on both of them. So on the Tomoe River, a lot wetter. But as I say, this Ayush paper, it does seem to be a little bit more absorbent. So what are my thoughts on the Moonman M800? Let me fetch all four in. I know we're going to hide the writing then. There we go. That's all four of them back in. So we've got the amber, purple, green and blue. I love these pens. They were one of the first Chinese pens I bought, and I liked it so much I got all four. So when I bought them, I had 2 Moonman nibs and 2 Bock nibs. I've changed one of the Moonman nibs, the one that we saw in the green, for that broad Goulet nib. Wow, as I said, I love that. It is inspired by the Leonardo Momento Zero. I'm not going to say it's a copy or a clone because the material is very different. The way that certain parts of it look slightly different, but it's definitely heavily inspired by. The nibs, as I say, Moonman and Bock, but they only come in fine. Again, for me, very personal here, I would like a wider variety of choice in nibs. I'd love to be able to buy a Moonman broad nib. If they brought out a version of that, I'd jump at it. They're cartridge converters. I'd love for them to fetch out either a piston filler, a vacuum filler, or even get rid of those metal fittings so it could be eyedroppered. I think that would be nice. And again, if they did that, to be honest, I'd be jumping and getting some more. I do like the colours. All of them nice colours. As I said at the start, the only problem is, like on here with this Chatoyancy, it's only in parts. And yes, I know it's part of the manufacturing process and it's a limitation. I accept that, but I'd still like to see more. Let's start giving this some scores. So in terms of pen look, I've already said I like the way it looks. I like the shape, I like the way it feels in my hand. I like the way it writes. The only thing that is the resin, the inconsistency. So in terms of pen looks, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. For the writing experience, no problems on this paper, no problems with this ink. I have had some issues with my writing, but I think that was more to do with the ink flow than the actual writing itself. The Moonman nib seems to be ever so slightly stiffer than the bottle nib. Still writes nice though. So I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10 in terms of writing experience. Now, ink flow. This is where, as I said earlier, I've had some issues. I think it's down to me because of that shimmer ink, and certainly with this purple one, once it was cleaned out, had no issues. But it's still, you need to be aware that I have had issues. And it may be of the fact I've pulled the nib and given it a good clean. The issue may have been before that shimmer ink, but I just need something to point the finger to, and at the moment, that's all I can think of. But we have to mark it on that. We have to mark it on what I'm seeing. So ink flow, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Value for money. Compared to the Leonardo, these are nice and cheap. And get all 4 of these pens together added up was still less than the price of one Leonardo. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love my Leonardo pens. And if I was given a choice between the Leonardo pen and one of these, I would jump for the Leonardo pen. Why I got these in the first place is I'd seen the Leonardo Momento Zero, loved the look of it, and it was that price tag that put me off. Whereas these seemed a little bit more affordable, and that's why I was happy to get them, because if I didn't like the way they felt in my hand, it would be pointless getting that Leonardo. When I look at these pens in comparison with other Chinese pens, they're in that medium to high price range. You know, I can get some pens for $2. I can get some pens, nice pens, for $20 to $30. The cheapest of these was $52. So again, got to bear that in mind. There's a lot of price difference and not a lot of writing experience difference between these and some of those cheaper ones. So value for money, I'm going to be nice and generous because I love these pens. I love the looks of them. That all comes in. So I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10, which means that the Moonman M800 comes out with a total score of 7.75 out of 10. So this has been my fountain pen focus of the Moonman M800. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. What are your thoughts on the Moonman M800? Do you have any of them? Are you planning to get any of them? Please drop your comments down below. Let's kickstart that conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.